What's up, everybody? I know you've missed us. We missed you too. Tilted Talk, after its small hiatus, is back.
How you guys doing? What's up, man? It's good to see you, Dave.
Oh, dude, it's been too long. It's been too long. It feels weird. Like we were so used to seeing you every week, like talking to you every week, that taking that like 3-week break was
I know.
It's a little offsetting.
I know. I don't know if it
would come around and was like, huh?
Yeah, it's like some might call it a vacation, but I call it a punishment. I'm glad we're back. I'm glad we're back.
Yeah, me too, man. Lots been happening in the Fortnite world since we've
You have no idea.
Oh,
it's crazy, man.
Oh, I do. It's been a lot. But yeah, guys, this week what we're going to do is we're going to obviously take a quick look at the patch that just came out today, patch 10.4. Take a look at the Combine that was announced today. That's kind of interesting. I'm actually excited to kind of talk about that a little bit. And then, as usual, get into some hot takes. We don't actually have any clips this week. We're just going to kind of do a state of the game talk and kind of talk about where we think everything's at and kind of put a cap, I guess, on the last couple of weeks of changes overall, and give you guys some insight there. And then if you have any questions from the chat over the course of this episode, hit us up with those, and we will get those answered for you live here at the end of the show. All right, patch 10.4.
Yes,
all right, first things, irrelevant, limited time modes, who gives a shit? Weapons and items. Explosive batarang. So they added an audio visualizer icon.
I mean, we probably even missed a couple things.
Yeah, so we missed this even coming out. We missed this and the shield bubble coming out, which both things have kind of been altered a little bit. So how much time have you gotten to kind of mess around with these, and what have your thoughts been on them so far?
I mean, from the clips that I've seen for these items, they a lot of them feel like repackaged other types of items, other types of weapons that they have vaulted in the past. They kind of reskinned it as something else, which is clever. There's only so many ideas that they can really run through. That's why everything's getting so damn nutty.
Yeah, you kind of end up in this state where you have to do some like really weird, crazy stuff to just kind of come out of the box, and that's like to keep things fresh, I guess. But when you do that, then you kind of upset a lot of people too. It's like a really weird balancing
Epic
act.
is trying everything to just make sure they can go around your wall. Like instead of going through them now, they want to try and go around them. Like you ever see the movie Wanted, where the guy curves the bullet?
Yeah,
there's now a lot of weapons in Fortnite that you can name, probably not even on one hand now, that can do that type of thing. It's pretty fun for people that want to get creative, and it's even more fun for people, I think, that want to troll a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's just kind of unfortunate because obviously, Fortnite spent so much time focusing on building.
You know what? If you want to troll well enough, I had this perfect idea. They just announced recently, which I'm sure we'll get to, but the addition of bots coming to the game, was that or was that not an out of season April Fool's joke? Is this a real thing actually happening?
I really hope not,
because I'm gonna just walk around with no skin at all and just kind of like look around and like stare at the ground and
pretend to be a bot.
But the funny thing is, you're gonna try and do whatever you can to act like you're an AI controlled bot, but really, I mean, how is that any different than just being somebody who has never played the game before? They're going to move the exact same way. Unless you were the Gears of War 2 bots, those things snipe your heads off across the map without even aiming down the scope. But
yeah, well, that's where bots go too far, right? Like, because, I mean, you can just give them, like, a laser aim. Like, even some, like, campaign games, they do that. Like, the bots at the highest difficulty are just, like, almost unkillable. Like, they have more health. They do more damage with their bullets, and they just don't miss. And you're like, how do I win? What am I supposed to do against this?
I'm wondering how the bot characters in the future are going to be able to react to like things like this, like the batarang. And now you have the shield bubble bouncing off other players. Mm-hmm. That's a small change too. So now you can kind of, if you're good enough, if you're lucky enough, there are so many variables now that adds into plays, which a lot of people actually like the shield bubble, which is great to see, because when they've a lot of things, they went down a streak, Epic, where people were just being negative, and the shield bubble has actually been used for a lot of good plays. I think it's basically their response to the storm, or the bottled storm that you could throw. And I think this is pretty much the better version of that.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting item. I definitely like it a lot more than I've liked a lot of the other stuff that Epic has thrown into the game over the past like 2 months. So that's a win.
Yeah.
I just can't tell at this point if I like things because they're not absolutely horrific versus if I actually like them. You know what I mean?
I know.
It's like a really weird state.
It all depends on what happens first. If
Yeah.
you get a kill with it first, you're like, it's pretty nifty. I like this.
Hmm.
If you get killed with it, especially like multiple times in a row, you're gonna be on the forums, on Reddit, on Twitter, or doing what you, or just screaming at the screen, at the television.
Yeah, I mean, I got a team wipe with the airstrike thing. Like, I think that's the first day it came out or the second day it came out, and I was immediately like, "This is stupid."
Really? Well,
I was like, these players are like, it just felt like they didn't even have it didn't feel like a fight. It just felt like I can throw a grenade. I have some semblance of some knowledge of geometry. Let me just chuck this in there, and oh look, I just wiped the whole. Okay, cool.
Well, you know those trailers that they release for certain items that get added to the game, like in-game trailers to kind of promote them. Well, I've seen people complain all the time, be like, that's not an accurate representation of what the Battle Royale game's like playing total noobs in the trailer. But I mean, honestly, for those, items like that, sometimes those trailers are like the best version of those weapons because when you actually use them, they're not that great.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they make the trailer for cinematic effect and to display what it can do. It's like, I always thought that criticism was kind of stupid because you look at, you look at like League of Legends or something when they release a new champion, they show you like somebody essentially standing still or doing exactly what you want them to do for you to get like the maximum effect of your skill or ability off, right? So it's like they're there for illustrative purposes, not like actual real gameplay scenario. No. They don't have that like fucking sentence in the bottom that just goes, "Oh, this is a real situation." Like, no, it's like for cinematic effect and to demonstrate like what this thing or this item can do, which is important. Like, it's important to have that like perfect scenario in your mind when you're playing, when you're using something. So then that way you know exactly what you should be going for, right?
Exactly, I agree.
They also involted the bouncer. Now, this I actually kind of liked because I liked the bouncer.
A lot of people have been waiting for this forever.
Yeah, it's fun.
Almost to the point where they forgot.
It's like, oh yeah, like honestly, yeah, I was one of those people because I completely forgot this was in the game until I read it in the patch notes that they're involving. I'm like, oh my god, I remember this. This was fun.
Yeah, it used for a while. It was the best way, the best mobile tool besides a launch pad.
Yeah,
I mean, people are using it pretty strategically to evade fights because you lose the fall damage once you get go from the bouncer in any direction. But I mean, now with them being added, I mean, there's so many different additions to the game in the rift areas. I mean, this is going to be really interesting. It's well beyond the point where you have to read the patch notes for Fortnite because you're going to wonder at this point, like, how the hell did I die this time? And it's like, oh, because the guy used the bouncer, went straight up in the air, and then shot right down on your head.
Yeah. No, you definitely have to, like, actually pay attention to the patch notes now, which I think is good because
right.
If you are a player who pays that much attention to the game, like, you should have an advantage over players like day one or day two who are not reading the patch notes and not paying attention to what's going on in the game and what's been buffed, what's been nerfed, what items are available to you, etc. You should have some semblance of that knowledge for you to actually play, right? So I think that's good that you have to read the patch notes. Let's see, what else did they do? There were some matchmaking changes. I think they said that, so you're apparently more likely to match people of similar skill, which is good. Because right now, I mean, I think this is something we've all been saying, right? Like, you need to have like some sort of matchmaking system that like makes it work.
Right. Now, at least for ranked on Fortnite, that people have been having their own method or their own version of for so long, they're going to probably try a bunch of different iterations of it, I think. I imagine it changing drastically every season, which it'll go in theme with the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think overall, though, like the fact that they're actually finally openly admitting, like, hey, we're going to actually match you against people who are of similar skill level, and as you get better, as you get more wins, you will play people of better and higher ability. I think that's overall a good thing because I think this is going to solve the problem that Epic has been trying to solve. And I mean, we've had this conversation on the show before where, we've said, why don't you just implement some hidden MMR, which just sounds like is exactly what they're doing and is exactly what they needed to do the whole time. Like, just put it so that those kids who are just starting to play the game can play other people who are either really bad or just starting to play the game and can get their first wins and can get hooked in and can kind of feel that excitement. Because it's completely like if you just picked up Fortnite or you're really not good at the game, there's no chance you're winning in a game against some of the players who I'm not even talking about like top level professional players. I'm talking about kids who just play this game 5 or 6 hours a day, watch some competitive and have like the ideas and semblance of how to build properly and how to navigate and all that sort of thing. Like you're not going to beat one of those players, maybe 1 in 1,000, right? Yeah. And there'll be a couple of those players in your game. You're just not going to, the odds are, the math gets out of hand really, really quickly. You're not going to win that game. But by kind of grouping players together of similar skill level, I think it really works nicely to kind of give some of those players an opportunity to get their wins, which is what Epic wants, while not forcing them to add stuff into the game, down the line that makes it so that competitive players really, really dislike it. Yeah.
I mean, for the way that the game has been, it's even if you have admitted or to the fact that, all right, the game is going to constantly be adding things, changing my favorite drop spots, doing things that are somewhat changing the integral parts of the actual game of Fortnite.
Yeah.
Even people that have admitted to that and are trying their best to adapt their game around that or their gameplay and game style. I mean, it's even hard for them because just even the people that are like ready for anything, because there are so many things that are now crazy variables. There's with the how many different items now, with the way that all of the different locations change and how that affects the end games. I've seen a lot of people that said, "Hey, we thought there's not going to be any end games through Rift Zones," and there was a lot of end games that were through Rift Zones that they had to actually hotfix for the game. So that's a lot of things you have to take into effect, because when things constantly get added, the game gets kind of bloated and things might break, which, it's good to add. It could be the best for the viewership adding things right before an event. But
don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm saying if that's what their main motive is, it's way riskier that things are going to break. I mean, don't you remember when there was that tournament that all of those players, I think it was in the summer skirmish, where all the players couldn't touch the ground. They were floating in midair in that one zone that was supposed to just have low gravity. That was madness. And it was something that was newly added to the game. They have to make sure that at least there's a small window before some of these things get implemented. I mean, that's all that I think a lot of these players really, really want. They just want some sort of consistency that they can at least look forward to.
Yeah, well, even from a viewership perspective, I mean, like, it might be more entertaining for like a casual fan who tunes in if it's just like this wackiness is going on, but you're going to lose a lot of the hardcore competitive, like the people who really like competitive Fortnite, because I think, competitive integrity is such a big part of watching an event and being in tune with an esports scene or in tune with anything. Yep. And if it's just like, oh, these players just got thrown this thing like yesterday and they don't know how to deal with it, and it's just completely weird, and especially if it breaks the game, like that's a whole other level of awfulness, right? Because then that's not even what Epic has intended. It's just a bug, and then you're displaying a bug, which is absolutely not what you want to do. Puts like commentators in a mention really weird position. I've been there myself before.
Because
it's kind of
whatever you do, just don't draw attention
to
the glitch. That's all you got to do, and sometimes it is unavoidable.
Yeah, exactly. So it puts your commentators in a weird position, and then the players get upset. They're going to be tweeting negative things about how this is dumb that this change came through. Like, at least give players some time to adapt, right? So that can kind of avoid some of that stuff. But speaking of Rift Zones, there's like Moisty Palms now and Starry Suburbs, which were not in the game.
Clashing of two locations, a former one and a current one.
Yeah. So Moisty Palms, that is really, really weird. If you crouch, you turn into a prop. So actually, you can't really. Basically, what they're saying there is you can't properly shoot, because if you crouch and turn into a prop, like you just all of a sudden are gigantic and you die. But if you don't crouch when you shoot an assault rifle or something like that, then you have significantly higher bloom levels, right?
Mhm.
So it just feels really bad. I feel like they've increased. Did we miss a patch somewhere where they increased bloom on some guns too? Because to me, it feels like whenever I use like an assault rifle or something, it just feels like the bloom on it is way higher than I remember it being.
I don't know. I mean, it also depends probably if you haven't played in a while. Maybe it's just taken a while to get back to that normal feel. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I feel that way a lot for the game when I don't play for a week if I get busy, and then come back to it. So it could be something that comes down to that. And also, if you're also talking about maybe jumping out of the prop and trying to shoot, it could be like somewhat to that effect that maybe the game's kind of dropping a frame or two in that spot and it's throwing you off. So there could be a couple different situations for that. I mean, the prop hunt version of that area where you can turn into things and then just camp out as much as you can. That's the best AFK area ever. It's awesome. If you have to go get your food from Uber Eats, if you have to go to hit the bathroom, get a drink, whatever you need to do, just boom, turn into a toilet, and you're just sit in the middle of the street. No one's gonna look twice at a toilet sitting in the middle of the street, and you're good. Come back in 5 minutes, and then as long as the storm doesn't hit you, you can just maybe catch somebody by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely got to practice your camouflage a little bit. I think I would shoot at a random toilet in the middle of the street, especially once you landed in that area like 2 or 3 times and you kind of know what's around, right?
Yep.
But definitely inside some of the buildings, you can just sit there as a piece of furniture and people will not necessarily look twice at you, especially if they're not like a super consistent player that really knows the ins and outs of like what this map is supposed to look like. And if you see an out of piece, how impressed would you be if you saw like a toilet in a bathroom, but a player knew that there was no toilet in that bathroom for whatever reason and killed that person? Like I would be super impressed. I'd be like, damn, you actually know. Yeah, you actually know every little piece of furniture that's supposed to be in that area.
It's a good idea, though. Walk into a bathroom and then just pickaxe the toilet, turn into a toilet, and then take its spot. You're good.
Yeah, I guess because you can just constantly like come out of crouch or like shoot or do something to like keep randomizing what prop you come in as, right?
It is like a slight delay on it, like where with you have to change over. So there is that. You can't. I don't think you can instantly shoot out of it.
Yeah. Starry, the suburbs. Interesting. They just give you like shooting stars worth of blue. That's exactly what I was thinking of, the
that's
Bag Raider
exactly
song.
what I'm thinking of. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool, but like now everybody's gonna land there because you want high tier loot. So my thought is, I haven't played enough games today to really like say for 100% certainty, but I feel like the drop is most likely very top heavy right now.
Anytime there's anything new added, I mean, Gotham City, for God's sakes, I saw screenshots and it looked like Tilted when it was first added to the game. I mean, that's
fantastic.
It's the sky was, you know what it looked like? It looked like the sky from that movie 300, where there's the arrows are flying and they block out the sun. It looks like that. There's that many people flying in with their gliders coming into that POI. My favorite part is when they add a new POI and go into those places because it just try to get a high kill game by killing as many people as you can right off the jump.
Yeah, it's always fun. I mean, I landed in Tilted almost exclusively for like the first month after it came out because you were guaranteed you were either going to die really quickly and you were just going to start a new game, or your team or you were going to get like 5 kills, 6 kills, like a lot of kills, right? That were up for grabs there and made it super fun. I'm not a big fan of kind of like playing the hide and seek version of the battle royale. It's a valid playstyle, especially at higher levels, but I don't have the patience for that.
When I first played, it was exhilarating. I was like hiding in houses, like just in the corner and like moving at the edge of the storm, just winning with 1-2 kills. But then, you ended up trying to, get better and better. But man, the first couple months, it was like I was playing virtual hide and seek.
Oh yeah, you get your heartbeat going a little bit. You can feel it, especially when it comes down to like the last 3 people. Oh yeah, no. The first couple months of the game, that's how it was played. It was really weird. And then somebody built a 1x1. It was like, oh my god.
Yeah, you would come to a place that had a fight previously, like a few minutes ago, that you missed, and there will be like one wall and that's it, and like just some weapons on the ground, and you're like, whoa, guy must have been a really good builder that was here. Like you just see that one wall or one ramp, and like that's how that game was when it first came out. But now, the simplicity of it is just something that I think a lot of players also thrive after. But if you have to learn to adapt to so many more of these new things that I think it just makes it even more exciting. We have seen the basics of Fortnite. We have seen that in competitive, I think, but now it's getting to the point where they're just like, how far can we take this?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I think I'm impressed. That was like a very small patch in terms of what was actually came out, and we just did like almost 25 minutes just talking about that.
Nice.
It's almost like we talk for a living or something.
I don't know. I mean, I could try it. I could give it a try, but
I could give it a whirl. It's professional. Anyway, the Combine. This is actually something that's super cool. So they announced this as well as some tweaks to the aiming and controllers, at least sensitivity and how all that works. So let's go into the Combine first. So this is a creative course, and it's basically like a time trial, but your whole goal is to finish it as fast as possible, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome, and I'm very curious to see like what people get, like what the scores people get are, and if people start really trying to beat each other's scores, etc.
Mm-hmm. I saw a clip where somebody was breaking. I think that broke the record on it recently. It was people are. Reminds me, and just takes me back to the course that like Scissors would make all those death runs that people would go through, and then you see how many levels there are. There was like 12 levels of just insanity, and then like, all right, well that's going to take you a half hour, and there's like people shredding it in like 4 minutes, 3 minutes. It's like, oh my God, man! Like people are getting so impressive with not only getting good at the game, it's overall like how to adjust, but the movement, the style of play that people are kind of innovating with, just basic building, and then, making their moves based on that, and using that also now with like obstacle courses and things. It also reminds me of speedrunning communities that things like that, like especially platformer games. I love following the speedrunning games or for different titles and watching clips like that. And that's what this kind of reminds me of. So it's really exciting to kind of see that world kind of mesh with Fortnite, because Fortnite's so I guess it's so flexible in that way where they can do anything they want with it.
Yeah, especially with some of the vehicles they've added in, like you can make like racetracks and stuff. But what I'm really excited about with the Combine is that it seems like, at least the way they described it, and I haven't got to try it yet, so that's unfortunate. I just didn't have enough time today to
yeah, I mean, yeah.
But it's pretty cool that they seem to have built this course, at least from the way they described it, to be something that's going to test your skills. So you have to take out enemies, you have to shoot, you have to build, you have to do everything that's like required in an actual Fortnite game in some sort of logical progression, I guess. That should actually be a pretty good indicator of how talented you are, at least mechanically, right? So if somebody's really, really good at doing this, then I could see that could be a catalyst for them to go, hey, look, I'm one of the top Combine scorers. I should actually like take Fortnite a bit more seriously. I'm pretty good at mechanically, at least. Now I just need to figure out more of the mental aspect of the game that can help me take out other players that can do some of this stuff against me, and kind of the mental game that goes into all that. But I think it's really, really good that they've added something like this, and I'm excited. I hope that they keep something like this around, and that they develop it, and like take feedback, see what's working, what's not, and like actually use it as a way so that players can measure themselves. Because in a game like Fortnite, it's really, really good, I think, to have a bar that you can kind of measure yourself against, in terms of like, okay, well, all the pro players achieve like a time of at least this on this Combine, right? Just like, in traditional sports, like we know, like you can't run a 40 at a certain speed. There's 0% chance you're making the NFL. Like it's just not happening, right? Like you're not athletic enough. You're not quick enough. You can't jump this high. If you can't bench this much in certain positions, like it's not happening for you. And I think that that's to kind of bring that sort of analog into the video game world and esports world, I think is actually a really, really cool concept that I'm surprised we haven't seen more games try. And I'm really, really hopeful that Epic will like continue to kind of push this idea forward and really like solidify this as like an actual way for players who are trying to get better to kind of like test their skills or measure themselves against the potential competitive pool and figure out, is this something that I should take seriously?
Yeah, this is going to test technical skill and muscle memory to the maximum. People that master this course and all that group of people, because there's a different level where you can master all the different things that you have to do in Fortnite, like a basic Fortnite game, run through this training area. There's a level to it that's missing when it comes to the pressure. If you started playing the game a year ago before any of this stuff was really available, you learned in actual game, playing solos, playing duos, but there was so much pressure while you were learning. It made things so stressful, but it really separated players and made that skill gap, I think, really, really apparent. But with these kinds of tools now and this kind of thing, you're going to see the maximum. People reach their maximum technicality when it comes to the actual gameplay. But I'm really interested to see how that's going to how players that come in and just absolutely master this part of the game, and then take that into the other aspects of their games and see if their shots are just completely on point. See if their technicalities actually carry over and basically perfect in the real game where they're actually playing other players or competing.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. That it won't necessarily translate, just like pure athletic ability doesn't necessarily translate to a sport, right? But I think the other thing that's going to be key actually for this is for the course to not be stagnant or the same. I think there needs to be portions. I think it needs to be randomly generated, so it's almost guaranteed to be different every single time, but at the same difficulty level of the task that you need to accomplish, right? Because otherwise you'll get kind of what you alluded to in terms of people memorizing the exact way to go through that specific level or the specific course. And it's not necessarily like they're good at Fortnite. They're just good at, they know exactly what buttons to press and exactly what order to accomplish the task, right? And obviously you'll need some shooting ability as well, but that's not going to be as helpful as a dynamic course that's constantly changing and evolving and maybe spawns randomly each and every time. So it's a new puzzle to an extent, but it tests your ability in such a way that it can be translated to actual Fortnite in-game skill.
Yep.
The other part of this update that they mentioned, which I'm actually really stoked about, and I know you probably are too, being a controller player, is the controller aiming changes. So they've actually added a bunch of different presets, I think 10 controller sensitivity presets, which is gigantic, as well as a new kind of use for the aim assist, and a new version of it.
The original aim assist, had its people spamming the L trigger, doing that. I wonder how this is going to really affect the game now.
So there's two things that I think are worth kind of noting here. One is the ability for another target to steal aim assist away, which I'm super happy they're trying to address this, because that's actually one of the more annoying things. You'd go to scope in, and it would kind of like pull you to the guy that you're not actually trying to kill, and it would almost like act as like counter aim assist. It's like, oh, you're trying to get this guy? Nope. Like now you're just going to shoot in between two people randomly. Really
when people used to hide in bushes all the time, the middle of my screen, my aimer would just go past the bush by accident, and it would pull to it, and I knew right away that there was somebody in the bush, and I shot, and I ended up, he ended up getting caught because of the auto aim. It's crazy like that.
Yeah, and they've also removed the target snapping, so the left trigger spam, which I think is good, and I think that was overblown. We'll get to that a little bit later today, in terms of that discussion specifically, but I think it's good that they're trying to kind of address that while simultaneously kind of buffing the one thing that was making it really, really frustrating to use left trigger and play console on, which is like that scenario where two people, especially in duos, on console, this would be like a viable strategy. Like stay super close to your duo partner and try and kind of position, like kind of make a triangle with the player that you're attacking and kind of come close and far apart. And that way you can kind of pull the aim away from your teammate sometimes, and you could keep them alive doing that. Super frustrating to play against, super annoying. So I'm glad that they're trying to work that out. I haven't gotten in enough games to tell you if it actually has fixed anything.
Yeah, I want to try some of those presets when I get a chance.
Yeah, definitely. Like the sensitivity presets too, that's pretty awesome. It should give players a much bigger range of kind of a feel, I guess, for the game and kind of really be able to find something that feels right for them. Because sensitivity is such a personal thing. I mean, you'll have some people swearing on low sensitivity, high sensitivity. The ADS has been slightly altered as well. So hopefully now players can kind of find something that works for them a little bit better than they were able to previously.
Yeah, they're just trying to give you as many options as possible, because, as you said, it's such a personal thing. They want to make sure that everybody is that they can at least make sure that the game is playable for as many people as possible.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, mouse and keyboard players can fine-tune it so specifically, right? So it's definitely going to be key for controller players to have some level like that of the same sort of consistency and the same sort of ability to kind of customize the feel of the game for themselves.
Yep.
Now, I think this is a good time to segue into our hot take section, because the first hot take comes from a Reddit thread where people are once again, and this is actually, like, I think we've discussed this at least one other time, maybe twice. There's once again an uproar over the controller players, and it's funny because when I was at the Halo Classic, shout out to UGC for throwing that out. That was an amazing tournament. I was talking to Snipe Down a little bit. If you guys aren't familiar with him, old school Halo pro, one of the best in the game, also a really, really good Apex player. And he says the amount of crap he gets from other Apex professionals because he uses a controller is unbelievable. And to me, I'm just getting so sick of hearing the keyboard and mouse players just whine and complain about somebody using a controller. Like, they're at a disadvantage in almost every conceivable possible way.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this is continuing to come, like, over and over and over again, like these keyboard players just crying about, controller players shouldn't be able to have this like little advantage, blah blah blah. If it was so good and it was such an advantage, every player would be playing on a controller. You don't see that, and there'd be way more than how many professional Fortnite players use a controller? Like 2, 3?
At least the top ones, yeah. There's only a couple, and most people that do play with a controller and still play with a controller or do it because that's how they started, or they're just so used to it for so many years and they didn't grow up on PC games. Some people that do play on keyboard and mouse did switch over, but some people have been playing on it for years, and they are so good at all kinds of shooters when it comes to controlling with keyboard and mouse, to the point where they can definitely wipe the floor more times often than not if they were in a 1v1 against a controller player, regardless of whatever L trigger, spam, whatever auto aim that you think that whatever that you might accuse it of. I mean, it does exist, but it is not something that's such a tool, that's such an assist that you can say that, oh my God, they're basically cheating. It's not that deep at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really need to kind of deconstruct this argument a little bit, just for some of the people who are constantly bringing this up, because I don't really want to see this argument anymore. Like, you look at the pros for using a controller, L2 spam, potentially, right? Aim assist kind of can tell you sometimes that somebody's hiding in a bush, like in the old days, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
it. What are the cons? Well, up until recently, like, again, and apparently, they nerfed the one con and the one pro at the same time, is this like aim drag to a target that you're not targeting, and to two players being too close, or if there was somebody way behind the person you were shooting, sometimes you get pulled towards that person instead of the person close to you. And if you have a shotgun out, that's completely useless. You know what I mean? So there's a big con to using a controller. Then you look at lack of sensitivity, lack of ability to finely control your motion. All these things are kind of fighting against controller players, and they have this like one potential pro that Fortnite has apparently removed. Now let's look at the PC side of the argument. Oh, excuse me.
It's just making you sick. This argument's making you sick.
Yeah, it is. Low key. You have an insane ability to move around incredibly quickly. Like, you can turn around, you can do a full 180, even if you play on low sensitivity, like almost instantaneously. So you have a faster ability to move around, look at different corners of your screen. You have the ability to play on low sensitivity without losing any of the benefit of high sensitivity. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a big mouse pad or desk area, you can play on low sensitivity, and any 180 you can do a big sweeping motion, whereas low sensitivity for small aiming, you can kind of do little tiny vibrations to kind of move around, little circles. Whereas a controller player needs to inherently choose, am I going for less accuracy and a higher sensitivity, or am I going for smoother, more consistent sensitivity, but that's going to significantly prevent me from being able to do anything if somebody gets the jump on me from behind? That's not a question that any PC player has ever had to ask themselves.
No. The first game, not exaggerating, the very first game that I played on PC, when I got my PC, I fired up, I played a few games CSGO, then I closed CSGO and I played Fortnite, and it was glorious. Got to play in way better frame rate than Xbox, and playing with a controller, I knew I was going to be at a disadvantage because I knew right away these players are going to be quick. One of the players in the game that I came across, the first player because I landed somewhere, I was like, yeah, it's PC world. Let me land somewhere far away from everybody. So the first guy I ended up seeing, I was probably, I don't know, like 20, 30 feet in game, like away from him, shot him in an open field. He 180, just turned immediately and started building like incredibly fast. But the way that he was able to spin and just build, I mean, the fact is, like, you knew right away, like, all right, this is what I have to deal with as a controller player. Ballpark. It's something that I have to now kind of adapt to. And controller players have done a damn good job, but there is, like you said, there's such a tiny amount that actually get to that top tier level of professional player that are controller based. It's everybody else is a keyboard and mouse. So what does that tell you? I have no idea where this argument's coming from.
Yeah, I don't either. And then, I mean, the one thing that we haven't even talked about, I mean, you briefly mentioned it there, but something that I hadn't kind of mentioned in summarizing the argument, this has all been relative to aiming. I haven't even started to talk about building, where you have all four keys underneath your four fingers. You can quickly cycle through things. It's so easy for you to do, whereas controller players legitimately have to, take their thumb off the aimer. Here's another thing. Controller players, no matter what kind of build you go, no matter what kind of controller settings you use, there's almost always in every single game an action that you have to take that removes your thumb from your ability to aim. Like, you have to take your thumb off the joystick in order to, unless you kind of claw. I guess you can claw, but that's super bad for your hands.
You can claw, you get then you'll have arthritis in 10, 15 years. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. There's been some players who have used it, but
I believe a scuff or those controllers that you can map the paddles, and that's what's recommended if you're a controller player. Obviously, I don't think there's no controller player that's playing with a basic controller. They all have scuffs or an elite of some sort. Those are the only controllers that you can really use that can, I guess, be formidable against somebody who's on a keyboard and mouse and trying to build against you. Because if you're on a normal controller, you have to get there's not many options, so you're pretty much stuck when it comes to combating against them.
Yep, 100%. And then if you're talking about somebody playing on a console, well, then you run into a whole list of other cons for that player, right? Like, you're talking about capped frame rates. You're talking about not necessarily changeable fields of view. Like, PC usually has a field of view slider. Console usually does not. So there's all these different things where it's just like, the advantages are so heavily stacked in the PC favor and in the keyboard mouse favor that the fact that anyone's crying about controller players like this, just has to stop. Like, you're just bad. Like, that's it. Like, you're just not good at the game. If you were better, then you wouldn't be crying about this. And the fact that I see pro players crying about it sometimes just blows my mind. Like, even great players, like I think like Mongrel or something made a tweet about it, saying like LOL, like goodbye controller players. Like, bro, like, what are you doing?
I want to leave it at this. If you have people that don't want the control, that think that the controller players are cheating and they're playing on a keyboard and mouse and all that, the whole aspect comes down to, everyone admits there are specific games that you play with a keyboard and mouse that you should definitely play with a keyboard and mouse. Always recommended. There are also a lot of games that people recommend you play with a controller. Call of Duty is one of them. People always recommend, you got to play Call of Duty with a controller. That's just that type of game. Gears of War, another one where people think you really have to play with a controller. Now, there are two mainly console games, honestly, but there's no hiding the fact that the console community is huge, just as big as the PC community, because consoles are really powerful. Yeah, PCs are getting even more popular now. They're more as popular than ever. But the fact still remains that there is such a large amount of gamers in general that are controller players that there now, with the way that technology is getting, we're having these games that give us the opportunity to crossplay. So you're you're going to have a lot of instances where people are playing on different peripherals than you, and if you want to have that flexibility, you want to have that freedom, that convenience. Everyone's got to get used to this fact and not complain about it, because at the end of the day, there is no advantage, and they do every game does their best to make sure that it's an even playing field as much as they can. And let me just say, I mean, I'm not even going to mention aimbots that people get on keyboard and mouse. Like, I was playing CS:GO yesterday, and there was a guy hacking in the game. I mean, it was just that right there tells you, like, there's so many more advantages that people on PC can get, that low key, even like people will never know but them, like some sort of client they're running. Console players come from such a different realm. We're much more humble, I believe. Unless you talk to certain Call of Duty players or certain Gears players, they come off as loud, but they're just passionate. The controller players, the area they come from, cross playing with PC players, they do not have the advantage. It comes down to accuracy at the end of the day, and Fortnite has Bloom for all the that matters. So what L trigger? Yeah, it helps with auto aim or aim assist and whatever you want to, whatever the verb that you want to use on it. But it PC, I mean, I play keyboard and mouse with so many other games, with every other game actually, but Fortnite. And the only reason I don't play it with keyboard and mouse is because there's so many goddamn buttons. With the way the weapon inventory and the building, like you cannot play with default. There's no way you play with default, because you have to have like somehow longer fingers than me, which I don't even know how that's possible. My fingers are like each one's like a telephone pole. So if you can't reach the F1 through F4 key to build on those default, like, you're obviously changing your binds. So you're going to either figure it out yourself, or if you're at least somewhat you have like a researchable attitude where you're going to go on, say, Reddit or somewhere and then be like, what are the best keybinds for me? For me, I did try it, but it is way harder than it seems, especially for Fortnite. For games like Overwatch, for games like CSGO, they're a lot more simplistic, I believe. So there's just so many less keys that you need to worry about. For Fortnite, it is a very difficult game. Keyboard and mouse players are insane at this game. They are so much more technical when it comes to the actual game itself. Controller players, man, that's why it's so much more impressive to me when I see a controller player whooping ass, because of that.
Yeah, same here, man. Well said.
That's all.
Amen.
I think that's all. Yeah, that's all needs to be said.
I think we wrap it like that. Shout out to Nick Merckx, holding it down for us controller players out there. The other hot take that I wanted to discuss was, and I think this will lead us kind of nicely into our last section as well before questions. Mongrel said he's not competing in the Cash Cup this weekend. Not playing this. You can read that word yourself. You can read the second half of that yourself. Actually, there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't necessarily want to say, but basically his apparent argument is that everyone's dying right away in these games. The end zones are not fulfilling. There's like 20 people alive after the first circle. So basically, what happens is you have a bunch of fights, and then for the next 10 to 15 minutes, you're basically playing like, let's traverse the Fortnite map. And, you might run into one other person or one other duo or whatever it is, or trio or whatever you're playing, but everyone's gone and the map is barren, and it just becomes like this, let's mine for 15 minutes, bringing you back to the good old days of Fortnite when people would just sit around and mine for like the first 10 minutes of the game. And that's kind of what it feels like in the mid game right now. And I don't think Mongrel's alone in kind of being frustrated in how not necessarily fun that feels. Like, I think a lot of the competitive Fortnite players at the highest levels, especially, have become addicted to that end game state with, a small circle and 50 people left, and everybody's just kind of trying to kill each other. And it's just this insane, chaotic war zone that almost looks like, the Fortnite version of like a world war, where you just have guns and bullets flying everywhere, and people are holed up in certain areas and shooting at each other, and you can't even stick your head out without getting shot at, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that he's decided that he's going to sit this one out. I haven't seen too many other pros kind of echoing the sentiment, but I think it's not as rare as it might seem.
I just I think it's a smart idea for him to sit out. Now he can just rake in like 100K viewers for just having a viewership party for the Cash Cup itself. But in all honesty, I see his frustration. This reminds me of a dark day in Fortnite where you would play at any game mode or any solo really, and it would be 20 alive at the end of the first zone, like a regular solo game. And I'm like, oh my, it's just like those were so taxing to get through. You had to just spend a lot of mid game just traversing, doing a whole lot of nothing. Yep. So I see his frustration because he is a very fun player to watch, and watching him try and just mine for 10 minutes, that's like definitely not something that I imagine that he wants to, worry about doing it. Make some extra cash on and get some extra subs on Twitch and just host a viewing party for it instead. Don't play in it in that case.
Yeah, it's not a terrible idea. But it's interesting that he's going to sit this out. I mean, these guys, esports pros, their careers are so short that, personally, I think any opportunity you have to kind of make some money, cement yourself. I mean, obviously, he's already very well established as one of the best players in all of Europe. But still, any ability and any opportunity that you're given to kind of cement that and to rake in some extra cash, I think you should take. But
right,
what do I know? I'm just a lowly commentator, a pundit on the side of things.
That's all. That's all we are.
All. Relegated to the sidelines. But I think this kind of opens up the floor for what is our last topic of the night here in terms of the state of the game. So I know we don't have too much time left, but I kind of want to get your thoughts and your impressions on, where the game is right now. Maybe, overall, as well as kind of in context and in comparison to a couple weeks ago when we kind of left off. And I think that was, unless I'm missing an episode in my brain, I believe that was an episode where we both ranted at significant points for significant lengths about
things
we were not very happy with.
I'm sure the hiatus frightened a few of you listening because you probably thought that we just got up and quit after that. But I'm glad you mentioned that, Dave, because I was just thinking that those few weeks off, that was a good thing because I had a little bit of time to breathe and, relax on everything and realize, the way that the game is moving right now in its current state, they're still trying to try different things with the competitive and make sure that everybody in every region is in a fair competitive environment. Because, man, a lot of people were saying, like, don't forget the World Cup was decided in 6 games, which is insane to think about. Just 6 games solely. It's wild. So being able to have all these different avenues that you can compete with and try and expand your brand and your skills and, also trying to get on that board of highest played Fortnite players, it'd be nice too. So, I mean, there's so many players that are still sticking with it that can see that there's still so much more that needs to be done with Fortnite. Why would players walk away if they're in such a great spot, skill wise with the game? It's tough to learn another game. Just because you're a pro player in one game, if you're labeled as a pro gamer, yes, that means you're usually well-rounded in all kinds of games, but a lot of the times you can't just go right into another game and become a pro player in that game. It's very different, especially for Fortnite. Fortnite is a very unique game, as we know. So there's no other build shooters, nothing like it, right now, as far as the Battle Royales go, even like Battle Royales, the other ones out there, PUBG, Apex Legends, things like that. So this game, third person, totally different on so many other levels. So players right now are sticking with it because they're still having fun, I think, with the game if they're able to deal with a lot of the crap that goes on. Because I feel like there's like a week or two of just like absolute, like, this game, I can't stand it. The meta always shifts, regardless of what happens when it comes to the mechs, when it comes to this, when it comes to that. Everything gets shifted in a certain way. And really, that's all what the players are now kind of like working towards, but it's still hard when you still have all these curveballs thrown at you. It's in esport unlike any other, so you got to give Fortnite its props for that. It is definitely a tier 1 esport because it's just something so damn unique at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely really, really unique. I think, the meta shifts are something that every game has to deal with, and I think players, are kind of becoming a little bit accustomed to them.
Right,
Um,
in the most extreme way, Fortnite has to do it because
yeah,
a lot of games do, but Fortnite does it right before events and
right,
such and
right.
such.
And I mean, most games shift the metas by kind of tweaking the stats on items or champions' abilities or something, right? So, like, an example
Yep.
would be like, okay, we're gonna slightly nerf the shotgun damage and slightly buff the SMG damage, and see if that gets more players to elect to use an SMG close range rather than a shotgun, or the other way around, or slightly buff this assault rifle or nerf that one, and kind of really try and tinker with things that way. Fortnite is like, we're just dropping bombs in here every week. We're giving you new
Yeah.
items. We're giving you new this. Overall, I'll say this season I have not been the biggest fan of. I think, they kind of put themselves. It's tough when the first thing that the thing and the thematic approach to the season is such a off the mark kind of strategy in terms of like the mechs and stuff, because they set all the season challenges, right, to have that stuff in it, and they're not going to just take that out. So
Yep.
that kind of put them in a really bad spot. I think, though, recently they have been making good positive changes. Stuff that, like the shield. Oh my God, shield bubbles. Yes, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
The shield bubbles I think are good. Bringing back the bouncer I think are good. They nerfed the mechs into oblivion, and they're still there and they're still suck to kind of encounter, but they're nowhere near as oppressive as they were at the beginning of this season. So I think. And the other big thing I think is this matchmaking change, which I think, it might go overlooked, but I think this is really going to set Fortnite up in the future to kind of be able to accomplish both goals simultaneously, where they can help those newer players or those players who are significantly worse at the game get those W's. Meanwhile, the players who are really, really good at the game can have a competitive game that feels stable. We didn't even talk about the Batman thing. I think this is pretty awesome. Bringing Batman into the game, and you mentioned Gotham City kind of being where Tilted Towers used to be, and it's pretty cool.
I said I would never buy another skin, man, and then they got to release the Dark Knight skin.
They got to release the Batman skin. It's like they were listening to you or something.
Come on.
So yeah, I think right now the game is in a much better place than it was when we left off with the show last time.
Yep.
Although I would still like, the focus to be, there still needs to be a little bit of a work. I think there needs to be a focus on the competitive side and kind of really make it so that, like this matchmaking change, find other ways that are less obtrusive to the people who really are trying to dedicate themselves to this game and take this game super seriously. Things that can help the newer players without hamstringing those players at the top end. So that's kind of how I see Fortnite right now. But if you guys, at home are watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. Where you think the game is, what you think Fortnite's doing right, what you think it's doing wrong, what are the problems? Kind of all that being said, if you guys have questions for us next week, you can tweet them at, myself, you can tweet them at Tyler, you can tweet them at UGC all week long. We'll kind of accumulate those and we will discuss them next week. Also, clips of the week. We'll be back with clips of the week next week. Unfortunately, today was just insane day for me, and I didn't really have time to find some of the clips that I would have liked to find and aggregate those. And with us coming back into it, we figured we kind of do a little bit of a more breakdowny kind of approach than some of the usual stuff that we do. But next week we'll definitely be back with clips of the week. So if you have a cool clip, submit it to us. If you find one on the internet, just share it even if it's not yours. Be like, hey, look at this insane clip that this guy posted something somewhere. Send those our way. If they're on Reddit or something, or trending on Twitter, we'll find them and we'll see them most likely. But if something's buried, if it's one of your friends or you that pulls this off, hey, send it our way. We'd love to see that.
Agreed. So make sure you guys send them our way. Just nothing is too crazy, especially for the show.
Yeah, we've seen some nutty ones on here. I think at some point we really should just do a clip show where we compile all the clips that we've ever seen on this show.
Best clips of all time.
Yeah, and just kind of figure out who the current.
That would be amazing.
And then vault all the we'll do it Fortnite style. We'll vault all the other clips, and then we'll move that one clip forward into the future. And future clip contest, maybe we'll bring that the winning clip.
Bring that one to Fortnite too.
Yes. All right, guys. You've been with us this whole time. We love you. We appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. No more hiatus. Tilted Talk is back. Fear not, my children. The authorities have returned.
Much love, guys. We'll catch you soon.